They seemed perfect. Two couples, two marriages, one friendship. But behind the strained smiles hid old feelings and secret meetings that never made it onto any calendar. Small inconsistencies, innocent coincidences that together turned into a catastrophe. Peter trusted as easily as he breathed, effortlessly and unconditionally. And when the betrayal came to light, he didn't scream. He didn't seek revenge. He chose the truth, brutal but redemptive. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments, so let's get started. Peter had a natural way of putting others at ease, though he was careful about whom he let in. There was an almost uncanny awareness to him, as if he could sense what went unsaid, noticing the space between a person's words and their behavior. When he chose to volunteer at a neighborhood outreach center, it wasn't out of boredom or obligation. It was driven by a quiet need to connect with people whose lives looked very different from his own. Spending his time distributing hot meals, sorting clothing, and listening to the stories of those experiencing homelessness gave him a sense of purpose that his professional accomplishments never quite delivered. One uneventful afternoon, while he was organizing a pile of donated goods, Peter had his first encounter with Caleb. Another volunteer had fumbled a stack of boxes, and as Peter stepped in to assist, he noticed someone already there, grinning, sleeves rolled up, gathering the items with an easy, relaxed energy. Caleb's quick wit and unassuming charm instantly set the tone. Within hours, they found themselves side by side, hanging clothes, swapping anecdotes, and laughing like old friends. Their connection was immediate and effortless. Peter tended to observe more than speak, while Caleb seemed born to tell stories. But their differences didn't matter. What bonded them was a mutual comfort in each other's presence, a kind of unspoken understanding that kindness counted more than resumes. It didn't take long for their friendship to extend past their volunteer shifts. They started grabbing coffee after work, giving each other lifts home, and discussing everything from old movies to the complexities of marriage. Peter often brought up his wife, Mira, always with warmth. He described her as his anchor, someone who had stood beside him since their university days. Caleb spoke fondly of his own wife, Rhea, with an amused smile, claiming she kept things running smoothly at home, something he appreciated more than he let on. Their conversations felt grounded and genuine, rooted in the shared rhythms of married life. One afternoon, after a taxing shift helping displaced families, Peter casually floated the idea of having dinner as couples. Nothing fancy, just an evening to unwind. Caleb was immediately enthusiastic. He said Rhea would enjoy meeting Peter and Mira, and they quickly settled on a date with the kind of ease that comes with real friendship. When the evening arrived, the setup was simple. Mira had made her well-loved lasagna, and Peter brought home a bottle of wine from their corner store. Caleb and Rhea arrived right on time, bringing their usual good spirits. Rhea was warm and gracious, Caleb, as always, light-hearted. But something happened in the moment Mira and Caleb were introduced that Peter couldn't quite forget. Mira's greeting paused, just briefly, and her eyes lingered on Caleb as if trying to place a memory. Caleb, too, hesitated, blinking twice before extending his hand. Mira smiled, but it felt a second too late. Their handshake was unusually brief, and Peter, watching from nearby, noticed every beat of that silence. The evening continued with plenty of stories and laughter, but a few awkward silences crept in where ease had been expected. Mira refilled glasses gracefully but fumbled Caleb's name more than once. Peter picked up on how she seemed to avoid looking directly at him. Caleb, usually animated, was more reserved. Rhea, by contrast, seemed oblivious, engaged in the moment, complimenting Mira's cooking and sharing a story about a book she was enjoying. When the evening wrapped up, Caleb thanked Peter warmly and suggested they do it again soon. Mira waved from the doorway with a polite smile, then disappeared into the kitchen. Later, while doing dishes side by side, Peter commented that the night had gone well. Mira, drying plates, remarked flatly that she thought Caleb was a little odd. Peter laughed it off, chalking it up to Caleb's quirky nature, and proposed they host the next dinner at Caleb and Ria's place. Mira didn't protest. She only said she was tired and that they could revisit the idea later. Peter let it go. He trusted her. Or maybe he was too willing to trust. Still, something faint and uneasy took root in his thoughts, a passing doubt he wasn't ready to look at directly. The couples continued to spend time together. They went out for casual lunches, held game nights, and showed up to local events as a foursome. On the surface, everything appeared effortless. Their friendship looked natural. Peter enjoyed being around people who shared his values, people who cared deeply and gave freely. Caleb was always quick with a joke, Ria brought a gentle warmth, and Mira appeared content in this new social rhythm. It all felt like it belonged. Until the small cracks began to show. It started with the details, minor, almost meaningless things. One morning at breakfast, Mira mentioned she had a doctor's appointment that afternoon. Just a routine checkup, she said, and she planned to use the time to catch up on herself. Peter didn't think twice. But later, arriving at the charity center, he ran into Caleb, who was just leaving. With a grin, Peter teased him about skipping their shift. Caleb smiled back and said he had an appointment, but would make up the time later. It was a throwaway comment. Insignificant. But over dinner that evening, as Mira spoke casually about her day, something tugged at Peter's thoughts. That strange look when she met Caleb, the tension. And now this, both of them off for appointments on the same afternoon. It didn't add up to anything concrete. It wasn't even clear. But it was enough to linger, to nestle in his mind and begin to grow roots. Another weekend came and went, and once again, Ria and Caleb canceled lunch at the last possible second. They claimed there had been a mix-up with their calendar, a prior commitment they'd forgotten. Peter didn't protest. It didn't upset him much. What did catch his eye was Mira's reaction. She didn't even try to hide her annoyance. It was more than disappointment. It was personal, like she'd been genuinely looking forward to seeing them. Peter made a mental note, marking the moment the way one highlights a sentence they sense will matter later. In the days that followed, Peter began seeing things differently. The silence in their home felt denser somehow. Mira's laughter when she spoke on the phone had an oddly deliberate quality. She started dressing up more for casual hangouts, putting in extra effort without reason. A stray memory surfaced. Mira once mentioned spending 2 years of her youth in a quiet rural town with her grandmother. Strangely enough, Caleb had brought up that very same town during a recent chat, saying he'd lived there briefly. He hadn't offered many details and didn't seem keen to. None of these things stood out much on their own. But together, they painted a picture Peter didn't want to see. He tried to dismiss it, telling himself he was tired or overanalyzing. Maybe it was just insecurity creeping in. Yet something beneath the surface refused to quiet down. A quiet, persistent intuition Peter had learned the hard way never to ignore. So, he paid attention. He kept his thoughts to himself, collecting fragments of a story he hadn't been told. He waited. Either the pieces would fall into place or they'd crumble. He had no concrete proof. Just fleeting glances exchanged too long, weak justifications and a growing knot in his chest. Circumstantial, yes, but enough to unsettle him completely. Eventually, Peter realized he wouldn't find clarity unless he forced it. So, he took a gamble. He lied. One late afternoon, with a calm voice and an unreadable face, he approached Mira. "I just talked to Caleb," he said. "He told me everything. But I want to hear it from you. Go ahead." She froze, her phone slipping from her grip and landing on the couch. Her complexion drained of color. "What? What did he say?" she asked, visibly shaken. Peter's gaze was steady. "Enough to make me ask you directly." Mira took a shaky breath. Her voice wavered. Caleb and I dated in high school. It wasn't serious. Just a brief thing. He moved away, and that was it. Peter crossed his arms but stayed silent, letting the pause press on her. When I saw him that night at our place, I just froze, she went on. What was I supposed to say? Hey, that's my ex-boyfriend on the sofa? It felt too weird. I couldn't find the words. Peter's tone turned frosty. I could understand that in the moment, but you should have told me afterward. I was embarrassed, she murmured, eyes fixed on the floor. I thought you'd take it the wrong way. And after a while, it just felt easier not to bring it up. Peter leaned closer. Did you see him again? Even once? Grab a coffee, go for a walk, anything, just the two of you? Mira's forehead creased. No, absolutely not. Why would I? She said, defensive now. His voice stayed neutral. So no plans? No hidden meetings? Nothing I should be aware of? There was a pause. A flicker of doubt crossed her face, realizing he might not know everything. Her eyes darted briefly, but she answered swiftly. No, nothing like that. Peter gave a slow nod, feigning acceptance. All right, I just needed to hear it from you. He turned to leave, saying he was heading out for errands. No argument, no scene. But as she looked away, he slid her phone into his pocket. If she intended to alert Caleb, she wouldn't get the chance. He drove straight to a nearby cafe and messaged Caleb a single word. Urgent. 10 minutes later, Caleb showed up, breathless and visibly rattled. Peter wasted no time. Mira filled me in, he said plainly. Now it's your turn. Caleb squirmed in his seat, avoiding eye contact. But he knew there was no escape. Yeah, he said finally, exhaling. We dated in high school. It ended when I left. But after that dinner, we started talking again. We met a few times. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry, man. Peter's voice dropped to a near whisper, each word sharp. Did you sleep with her? Caleb's shoulders sagged. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry. Peter drove home, gripped by cold fury and a hollow ache. Every motion felt mechanical, slowed by disbelief. When he opened the front door, Mira sat casually on the couch, legs crossed, trying to project calm. She even gave a faint smile when she saw him. But he didn't wait. He pulled her phone from his jacket and tossed it onto her lap. It bounced off and landed beside her. Couldn't warn your boyfriend? He said, eyes locked on hers. Go ahead, take it. I've had it the whole time. Mira's face crumbled. Her skin turned pale as the truth hit. She stared at the phone, frozen. Caleb told me, Peter continued, his voice ablade, that you slept with him. Not once, several times, after that night. His words cut with brutal precision. Mira gasped, like the air had been knocked out of her. She stood on shaky legs that wouldn't hold. Peter, please, just listen. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was a lapse, nothing more. You mean everything to me. Please. Let's just go upstairs and talk. That's when he stopped her cold. No, you're leaving tonight. Pack your things. She reached toward him, but Peter was already heading up the staircase, each step mechanical, as if guided by instinct alone, an inner drive to protect himself. When he got to the bedroom, he yanked the closet doors open and began taking out her clothes, one item at a time. Every blouse, every pair of jeans he laid on the bed felt like a betrayal he'd somehow ignored until it had blown up in his face. He added heels, purses, bottles of perfume, anything of hers he could see, into the suitcase. He didn't yell, he didn't accuse, but the way he moved, calculated, precise, emotionless, spoke louder than any rage ever could. Mira stood in the doorway, crying openly now, her voice barely audible. Please, I'm begging you. I never stopped loving you. Her legs gave out slightly, her words crumbling as they left her lips. It didn't mean anything. It was a moment of weakness. Just once. I swear. Peter never acknowledged her presence. He continued folding clothes with exacting care, each motion restraining the turmoil inside him. Once he zipped the suitcase closed, he walked straight to her, took the phone from her unsteady hands, and flipped through her contacts. He found Ria's number, hit dial, put it on speaker, and placed the phone on the dresser. "Hello?" came the voice on the other end. Before Mira could react, Peter responded, his voice even, composed. "Hi, Ria. Mira has something she needs to share with you." Mira's eyes went wide, horror etched across her face. Her breath quickened. She lunged toward the phone, but Peter blocked her with an arm, firm and unwavering. "Tell her," he said, his gaze fixed on hers. "Say what you did." Her crying intensified, but her lips refused to form the words. Nothing came out. Ria's confused voice broke the silence. "Peter? What's going on?" He didn't wait for Mira to speak. He stepped in. "Your husband and my wife were high school sweethearts. They reconnected recently, met behind our backs. They were having an affair." A long silence followed. Then came the sound of weeping from the other end, a raw, cracking sob from someone whose world had just shattered. Peter ended the call. The silence in the room afterward was thick with heartbreak, two lives breaking in parallel. Without another word, he took the suitcase, walked down the stairs, opened the front door, and turned to face her. Mira followed him, barely upright, her face blotchy and swollen with tears. "Leave," he said flatly, his tone devoid of feeling. She opened her mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to plead, but he was already handing her the suitcase and pulling the gate open. With trembling fingers, she took her car keys, got into the vehicle, and drove off without a single glance back. She went straight to her parents' home. Peter stood at the gate unmoving, watching as it slowly closed. To him, it felt like the final punctuation on a chapter he had never asked to live. That same evening, Ria ended her marriage to Caleb. She didn't ask for explanations. The truth had spoken clearly enough. The divorces came quietly, no dramatic confrontations, no second chances, no empty apologies. Peter never returned to the non-profit work he'd once poured his heart into. Not because he hated it, but because those hallways were steeped in memories he could no longer bear. Caleb and Mira never reconnected. Whatever they had was just a ghost of something long dead, a wound from the past that resurfaced only to disappear under the weight of its own consequences. There was no redemption arc, no cinematic closure. No one walked away with the storybook ending. Peter kept going, not boldly, not dramatically, but with a steady kind of resilience. His heart bore the scars, but his pride remained untouched. He had chosen truth, no matter how it hurt. Weeks turned into months. Though the fury had long faded, he still hadn't figured out how to hope again. He filled his days with routine, work, errands, the dull rhythm of life. He kept his hands busy and his thoughts quiet. Then one afternoon, in the produce section of the local market, he saw her. Ria. She was by the apples, her hair pulled back casually, face bare of makeup, eyes as sincere as ever. Peter paused. He debated slipping away unseen. But before he could decide, she noticed him. Her eyes widened, and she offered a small, uncertain smile. He nodded and walked over. "Peter," she greeted softly, a breath of relief in her tone. "It's good to see you." "It's been some time," he replied. They chatted briefly, safe topics like work and how life had moved forward. The conversation was cautious, careful, like two people testing whether the wreckage had settled enough to stand on. As they prepared to part, Ria looked down, then back up with a gentle smile. "Would you maybe want to get a coffee sometime?" she asked. "Just to talk, with someone who gets it." Peter gave a small nod. At the cafe, conversation came easier than expected. They laughed a little, reminisced, touched old memories that didn't hurt as much as they once had. The pain was still there, but it had dulled, familiar, but no longer overwhelming. A few days later, Ria invited him over for dinner. It was simple, quiet. A glass of wine, soft music in the background, and an atmosphere that hinted at the possibility of healing. They didn't rush anything, but dinners turned into evening strolls into late-night conversations, and soon enough, a quiet comfort began to grow between them. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't a plan, but it was something real. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Peter let himself believe, maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better. Two quietly broken people found a gentle solace in the unspoken connection of a shared glance. But the clarity Peter had been avoiding finally caught up with him one still Sunday afternoon during a slow walk beneath the whispering trees of the park. Without hesitation, Ria reached for his hand. That simple act held a truth too loud for him to silence any longer. In that moment, Peter felt the undeniable weight of where they stood. He cared for Ria, admired her resilience, valued her kindness, genuinely wanted happiness for her. But what he felt wasn't love, not the kind that could truly anchor something real, not the kind she so clearly deserved. Perhaps he'd been trying to reclaim something lost when Mira had walked away. Maybe he was just looking for proof that he could still be loved, still inspire something real in another person's heart. But there, holding Ria's hand, it felt deeply wrong to keep pretending. Later that same evening, he went to her home. He didn't want to delay the truth or let time soften it into something misleading. He told her clearly and directly. He couldn't go on when his feelings didn't match the depth she ought to receive from someone who claimed to care. He confessed that he didn't have answers about what came next, only that he couldn't keep up a lie, however gentle, about feelings that weren't truly there. Ria didn't respond right away. But when she did, her words came quietly, filled with quiet dignity. She thanked him for choosing honesty. She said that, although it hurt, she would always rather face the truth than live inside a well-meaning falsehood. They never saw each other again after that night. Their lives moved in separate directions, each holding a quiet sorrow, but also a mutual respect, the kind that most goodbyes never quite managed to preserve. Peter didn't seek out love again, not immediately. He didn't feel the urge. Instead, he came to understand that solitude, when embraced with self-worth, was more authentic than staying in something born from fear or longing. He moved forward, not rushing, but whole and steady, and with the quiet belief that honesty, even when it leaves scars, remains the most courageous and important gift he can offer. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend, and if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.